Hello again, I am Blunty. In the video immediately previous to this one, I introduced you to the brand new, just announced, not on shelves yet, Olympus PEN E-P5, the brand new flagship camera in Olympus's PEN lineup of micro four third cameras. And in this video, I'd like to get to grips with the nitty-gritties of it, the nuts and bolts of it. To get right down to it, we're looking at the hardware. What's changed, what's new, and how's it feel to actually use? Now, like I said, the E-P5 is the new flagship camera in Olympus's PEN lineup of micro four thirds cameras. It's supposed to be the best of the best, the ultimate in the lineage, the fanciest, most capable, feature-rich sibling of the PENs. And, well, it's precisely that. This thing is busting with fun new stuff. It looks and feels and operates with a very sort of premium feel. It gives off the impression immediately of being kind of crafted by people who give a crap rather than just sort of designed to wrap around the gizmos that need to fit inside. It gives the impression of this has been made by people who care. Now, we're always told it's what's inside that counts, but let's do the outside first, because for things you shove in your meaty graspers when you need to use them, the outsides matter quite a lot, actually. It's not just the insides that count. And before we dig in here, I must make note of the fact that this unit I was supplied with for review is pre-production hardware, and I'm running on pre-release firmware, version 0.9 for those keeping score, so some things may be tweaked just a bit by the time this beastie is actually hitting shelves. Having said that, my entire time with it, it performed flawlessly. No bugs, no glitches, no squeaks or creaks or other kookiness to be seen anywhere, and that bodes very well indeed for the full production run once it ramps up. On pure aesthetics, it's a damn nice looking camera. It's even prettier in its silver flashed alternative to the stealthy all-black unit that I had to play with. In fact, I'd go as far to say as the silver and black one is gorgeous. Now, size and shape and weight are actually very, very close to the EP3 that preceded it. The differences are numerical only. In hand, it feels next to indistinguishable. Same kind of weight, same kind of size, same kind of feel generally, except for the handling, because that's noticeably more comfortable, and the control ergonomics have been tweaked very nicely too. My meaty grippers were well pleased wrapped around this little bugger. Some of it is simple things like the power now being a nicely tactile switch as opposed to a mushy button. It's a small thing, but it all contributes to the solid feeling of a carefully designed piece of equipment. It's attention to detail stuff. There's a stereo mic pair up top either side of the hot shoe, a pop-up flash which unfortunately can't tilt up and backwards for using as a makeshift bounce flash, but is nonetheless mechanically solid and quite nice. The screen on the back is a 3-inch capacitive touch panel, which regardless of local conditions remained nicely visible and retained its clarity, and the image was nicely neutral in colour rendition too. Not too punchy, not too flat, nice and accurate. And usefully, it tilts too, and it's actually very, very thin for this type of tilting mechanism as well. It tilts upwards to up to 80 degrees, making low angle and from the hip shooting an absolute breeze, and it tilts downwards to 50 degrees, which I'd like to have been more, quite honestly, but it was still very useful nonetheless. The touch controls are extremely responsive, and even when using it to actually shoot, it worked brilliantly, especially when combined with that tilting screen for sort of hip-level street shooting stuff. Now, to be honest, I don't actually use the touchscreen much on my EP3. In fact, I kind of sometimes forget the EP3 even has a touchscreen. I use it so rarely. But there is something about the EP5's combination of tweaks that changed that for me. The touchscreen suddenly became much more handy somehow. I was using it all the time. Now, focus, particularly with Olympus's newer lenses, was blisteringly quick and very accurate. You move your focus point around as per usual, and you can also use the touchscreen to tap to focus and can even adjust the size of the focus point, which can make all the difference in the world in certain tricky situations when you're trying to focus on just a little thing. The shutter has the same subtle, lovely, kind of satisfying noise that the OMD EM5 makes, and the maximum possible shutter speed has been doubled, now capping out at an 8,000th of a second. At an 8,000th of... 8,000th... I can't say it. 8,000th of a second. Further towards the ergonomics, there's a nice thumb rest now too. It's grippy and slightly soft. It's lovely and rubbery, and has improved the handling over the EP3 significantly, both in use one hand or two, but also when just carrying it by your side. HDMI out for TV playback and a USB port sit under a nice little flappy door at the side. The new arrangement of the main control and function buttons is subtle, but it is way more ergonomic. Things fall under thumb nice and naturally, and the layout quickly settled itself into my muscle memory, which is a good sign of good interface design. And of course, being an Olympus, there's a high degree of ability to customize them when it comes to which button does what and when. You can tweak this thing in dozens of different permutations and different ways to carve it into the most natural feeling operations layout that suits the way you shoot best. The single vertical thumb wheel and ring dial around the multi-direction pad of the EP3 have now been utterly replaced by a set of twin thumb wheels, 2x2 wheels they call them. Just like on the OMD EM5, there's one on the front surrounding the shutter button and one at the top edge of the back just above the natural resting position of your thumb. This arrangement is much more natural feeling and much faster to actually use than the old layout. By default, the rear wheel is the main adjustment for the current shooting mode, aperture control for aperture priority mode and shutter speed for shutter priority mode and the like. The front one is set to exposure compensation, but again, being an Olympus, you can tweak this to whatever suits you best. Even right down to which direction the wheel has to spin to increase or decrease the current adjustment. Whichever one feels more natural for you, you can have it. And even further augmenting this high level of control, access and customizability is a new lever switch which hangs off the red dot button, which itself by default is of course the movie record button. That lever gives the twin dials both an alternate function. So in a single flick of your thumb, your exposure and aperture dials can instantly become ISO speed and white balance controls instead, for example, or one of several other combinations, and all of this adds up to a very impressive level of fast, accurate, instinctive control over your shooting. Experienced shooters will practically salivate at the potential this finely honed control scheme presents. Down on the camera's bum, you'll find the usual battery door, which also houses the SD memory card, of course, and the tripod mount has actually been moved over slightly, which, depending on your tripod head or mounting plate, may even mean you can get the battery and memory card in and out without having to remove the mounting plate. Something that I found impossible with my EP3, but occasionally possible with the EP5. It's a small thing, but it makes life slightly easier under the right circumstances, and I'm glad to see it. But back to that battery, it's changed. It's now the same one you'll find in the OMD EM5, as a matter of fact, which is a small annoyance if you're upgrading directly from one of its predecessors like the EP3, as you'll now have to buy new spare batteries. On the bright side, you'll need fewer of those spare batteries. The new battery and general battery life is superb. I did a full benchtop rundown test on it, and I recorded just under 3 hours worth of video before the battery finally died. And if you don't believe me, for poops and giggles, I uploaded the whole damn thing on a secondary channel. So if you really want, you can watch the whole 3 hours of the thing in real time if you'd like. That test also showed me there's no worries at all about sensor overheating problems with extended video recording sessions, which can be a problem on some cameras. Though, as with all stills cameras, it's still subject to that stupid bit of European legislation which artificially cripples the recording time per clip to just under 30 minutes, which is ridiculously unnecessary and annoying. And well, it's hardly Olympus's fault, so here's not really the place to whine about that. Moving on. Now, practically the only bit of the hardware I found actually problematic was the button to release the pop-up flash. It was far too easy to trigger. I was often finding myself accidentally unleashing the spring-mounted bastard into the world, only to grumble as I suppressed it back into its little hidey hole, unneeded and unwanted. Funny thing is, it's in practically the identical location as the same button on my EP3, but I checked it and it does indeed require a much lighter touch to actually trigger the mechanism. It's one of the few things I'm hoping is only an issue because this is pre-production hardware. Fingers crossed the ones that hit the shelves aren't quite so hair-triggered. So, that's the outside. Inside now, here's the killer new news. The aging sensor that lived in the EP3 has been replaced with the widely praised and generally superb 16-megapixel live MOS sensor that first made its entry onto the world inside the excellent Olympus OMD EM5. Now, this sensor has already made its way into the PEN lineup on the recently launched EPL5, but its life there is done so without the groundbreaking 5-axis image stabilization that the OMD EM5 also unleashed upon the world. But the good news here gets even better. Not only is that 5-axis stabilization in the EP5, but it comes complete with an even further refined version of that 5-axis stabilization technology, so it works even better, especially if you're doing things like doing panning shots. Also fresh and new is the continuous shooting speed has been bumped up to 9 frames per second if you want to lock the focus, 5 frames per second with continuous autofocus. The menu system is largely unchanged from the rest of the Pen and OMD cameras, but there are a few new features folded in there too, like the ability to do time-lapse shots without an external intervalometer controller connected to your camera. Rather annoyingly though, the maximum number of shots seems limited to just 99. I don't know why that limit would be there, it's uselessly low, or even if that's going to change in the finalized release firmware. I really hope so, because I almost never shoot a time-lapse with that smaller number of shots. It's usually in the number of hundreds. So while it's awesome to see the intervalometer function built into the camera at last, it's still a bit too limited to be really useful to a lot of people. But wonderfully, yet another hand-me-down from the OMD line is the awesome lifetime mode, which this time not only lets you watch a long exposure shot build as an exposure, so you can see precisely when to stop it, but you also now get to watch the histogram itself developing. Those of you who love long exposure shooting, low light shooting, especially if you like shooting light trails and light painting, oh holy bejeebus, you folks are going to adore this thing. Perfect control, perfect monitoring, perfect exposure every single time. It's going to make your lives so much easier. All the usual complement of art filters are on board, nothing new there, but good to see nothing missing either, as there's quite a lot of fun to be had when you've got a toy type lens on there, or like an adapted C-mount lens, or indeed Olympus's own recently released body cap lens. Along the same lines, the on-screen shooting menus are near identical to its relatives too, which is nice as I'm constantly diving into those to make quick and easy adjustments while I'm shooting. ISO capability has been expanded in both ends over the EP3. So now there's a low ISO 100 option, though given the sensor's native low point is still ISO 200, it's listed as a low option, and you will sacrifice a small slice of latitude in the dynamic range when you use it. But it's still nice to have the option there when things start getting tricky. And you can now swing all the way up to ISO 25600. And in the next video, when I look at stills performance, I'll also take a real close look at where noise becomes an issue in these high ends of the ISO scale. But above everything else, my most favorite new feature is the focus peaking. I've been aching for this feature. I praise it in every review of a Sony camera I do, as their implementation is simply superb, class leading. I say it over and over and over again. And Olympus, well, to be honest, they come damn close in their first stab at it, actually. It's not perfect yet, and again, this may very well be because I'm on pre-release firmware here, but there is a noticeable drop in the frame rate of the preview image on screen when you engage the focus peaking, which is done, by the way, by default via a convenient function button right next to the shutter release, so it's nice and easy, quick to engage. Now, the frame rate drop is not chuggy or anything, but you do notice it instantly. Aside from that, it works beautifully and nailing focus, even with fully manual lenses, C-mount lenses attached to it via adapters and stuff. It has never been easier. And in one of the videos in this series of review videos, I will focus exclusively on the use of manual lenses, in fact, and we'll get down to the nitty-gritty of just how well that focus peaking let me nail the focus quickly and easily every time. Almost every time, anyway. Unfortunately though, at least for now, the focus peaking is not able to be engaged in video mode, where it would be most useful, an omission that is rather disappointing if you're like me and shoot plenty of video. There is a workaround though, and I'll show you that in the manual lenses focused video. Hopefully focus peaking does make its way into movie mode in a firmware update. Perhaps it's being held back because of that frame rate drop I mentioned. We'll see. Fingers crossed anyway. And the final major new feature is built-in Wi-Fi, designed to be used with an updated version of Olympus's own smartphone app, and setup is so easy you could do it completely drunk off your ass. In fact, your grandmother could do it completely drunk off her ass too. You tap the Wi-Fi button on the screen, it turns on the Wi-Fi functions and presents you with a QR code, which you then take a snap of with the app on your phone, and all the setup is then done automatically for you. Nothing else to fiddle with. It's that easy. You take a picture of this thing and it's done. Naturally, you only have to do this once per device you're using it with. From then on in, it's utterly seamless. Turn on Wi-Fi, launch the app, and you're away. Now, just like the camera and indeed the firmware, the app I had to install was also pre-release code. It seems perfectly stable and performed flawlessly, but by the time you folks get to use it, some things may have been tweaked a little, just so you're aware. Now, from the app, you can take basic remote control over the camera. You can shoot stills, but it does default and lock into the intelligent auto mode, so you won't be manually tweaking your shutter, aperture, or exposure compensation and the like. I'm hoping this will come in an update too, because that kind of full control would be sweet. But for now, you can easily trigger your shots. You can select your focus point by tapping directly on the live preview. You can also use a timer delay, which will be handy for taking self-inclusive group shots, or indeed self-portraits, giving you the ability to trigger the camera from your phone and then give you enough time to shove it into your pocket and pose normally before the actual shot is taken. Kind of handy. The app also lets you directly download any still or indeed movie file you've taken, and the previews of these update very quickly indeed, making sifting through all your shots to find the ones you actually want to copy across to your phone nice and easy, nice and fast. It's really elegant. You can download the full resolution shot if you choose, or you can configure the app to save off a smaller file for faster editing and easier uploading. You can then edit them like you can with any other picture of your phone with any editing app you choose, and of course upload them to anywhere you like. But the app itself also has some built-in editing, including all of the art mode effects that are built into the camera. You can also create what Olympus call photo shows, which are tiled mosaic thingies. You can even add a custom signature overlay or graphic branding or watermark. As you can see, I was feeling a bit childish here, so I actually wrote boobs. Sorry about that, but I like boobs. You can also use the app to geotag your images if you wish. You can even use the app to completely power down your camera once you're done. It really is quite a nice app, and the Wi-Fi functionality of the new EP5 was flawless, and the live preview was nice and quick. The app even lets you choose if you'd like to prioritize a high quality preview or a faster updating preview, depending on which one you want. The only thing missing, besides greater manual control over the camera settings, was the ability to trigger movie recording remotely. Right now, it's a stills only deal, which again, as a guy who likes to shoot a lot of video, is a bit disappointing. So, quite the impressive package all up, a slew of new features and rather pleasant refinements. And it's a critter that's become more than just the sum of its parts really. Impressive as those new parts are, the whole thing hangs together in a really pleasant package that feels good in the hand, controls really well, and makes for a very satisfying shooting experience. And as you'll see in the following videos, the results, well, they're impressive too. In many ways, it's an OMD EM5 without the built-in viewfinder or the all-day everyday professional-facing features like the full weatherproofing or the extended battery grip. It even has a few tricks and bells and whistles that the OMD EM5 doesn't have, and that thing is, well, it's all over the internet being praised and glorified, so we're expecting good things from the EM5. And now, with all that out of the way, join me in the next video where we'll finally start taking a good hard look at what all this crispy hardware actually spits out onto your memory card. Stills first, then following that, the video performance, and trust me on this, they'll both be worth the watch. And after that, I'm putting it head to head up against the EP3 to just see how big of a leap it is model to model. But for now, that's it. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.